and they give a description. Now, how many here people wear the Kevin Durant sneakers or the Michael Jordan sneakers or decides to wear, hey, put your hands up, and how many here wear that new Adidas gear, Adidas sweatpants or things towards that nature? So, as by a show of hands, we tend to dress alike. And by we, I'm including myself in that. Because I'm wearing a suit right now, but trust and believe, I play basketball when I'm out of duty. My daughter who's in the audience will tell you, I look like everybody else in. So, if a police officer stops me, based on his radio call, we got a male black, wearing a blue shirt, a black and blue tie, and a black jacket. That's what I'm wearing right now. But if we're coming out of church, there's probably going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people dressed the same. So if I'm stopping somebody, it's not because I'm targeting you because of how you look, but based off of the radio call that just transpired over the radio, and based off of what we're looking for, somebody who just committed a crime and the proximity to where the crime was committed. So we're on Washington Avenue, and a crime was committed on Washington and Atlantic Avenue. Somebody just got robbed. Somebody's cell phone was just taken from them. The person ran going eastbound on Washington Avenue. I'm not just going to look on Washington Avenue because obviously by the time the radio call came over to me, it might be 5 minutes in the past. So I might stop somebody all the way down by Fulton. I might stop somebody all the way down by DeKalb. I might stop somebody, but it's based off of the description that came over the radio. It's not because we're targeting you. So now we stop you. Oh, well, you stopped me before I didn't do nothing. I just came out of, it's constantly what we hear. And I understand your frustration. I understand the frustration. But an officer trying to do his job and trying to find who did this kind of in an expeditious manner is trying to make sure that we get the right person. And obviously we're not taking the person who just came out of the library because they're not the thief. They're not the person who stole this person's phone. And that will be easily inquired once we realize you have an alibi. You was in the library. You have people who vouch for you. There's cameras. You don't have the person's phone on you. And there's other things. When the victim comes and sees you, no, that's not him. But there's many times where, in fact, people get so irate, and it's understandable because you feeling as if you did nothing. Why are you stopping me? Until you're a victim of a crime and you want officers to find the person who victimized you, it's a little different.
I just want to add, just to add to that, if you feel like, I know you mentioned the officer being less than respectful. If you feel like the officer is less than respectful when they stop you for whatever reason, yes, they have the duty to serve and protect the citizens of the area they're patrolling, but they also have a duty to be respectful to even murderers. They can't kick people, they don't have a right to do that. So it's not acceptable for them to do that, and you're absolutely right to make that assumption. However, because they are the person in authority, rather than have the situation escalate, my recommendation to you is to comply. And in addition to your compliance, make sure that if you're with friends, somebody's videotaping it, that is legal. And it is usable as evidence in a court of law. Make sure somebody is videotaping it on their phone or on their camera. Make sure there are surveillance cameras and that you notate that. Make sure there's sufficient evidence so that when you come and say you are arrested, say you match the description and it's something not as simple as a cell phone robbery, it's an assault, it's something that will take longer to investigate. Make sure you have enough evidence so that when you put in your counterclaim and when you want to make an investigation into the police officer and the question of police brutality, make sure you have all that evidence so that you too can get your justice in addition to proving you're innocent. Oh, absolutely. Badge numbers, names. If in the chaos you're able to get that, make sure you just obtain as much information as possible because it helps us investigate as much as possible because there are 10,000 cops in the city. So, it's a little harder to say a cop assaulted me. Oh, okay. Now which one? So make sure that you get as much information as possible if you feel that you've been the victim of police brutality.
Hi, good morning. Just to add a little bit more information, even a vehicle number, if you can get a vehicle number because everyone is assigned a vehicle number. And as to go back to what your question was, in regards to where you said that the officer might have been less than respectful, sometimes when, and I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but sometimes when an officer does approach you, sometimes just the mere presence of the officer being there already gives you an intimidation or an angry factor. So maybe sometimes when they are saying stuff, you may think they're being you feel that they're being disrespectful or less than respectful than what you think that they should be. And maybe they're not. It just could be the point of the fact that you have already reached an escalation for the simple fact an officer came to you. But the most important thing is whatever they ask you for, you be respectful and you comply with their orders. Because as long as you try to keep that level as low as possible, deal any questions that are asked, you answer them. If they want your ID, you give them your ID. And if they are still disrespectful or you feel that you have been wrong, as everyone else said, you make sure that you get that identification. So if you do make a complaint and the complaint is lodged, a way to investigate, they have as much information as possible.
And you would call CCRB. CCRB is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. You call CCRB.
If it's in Brooklyn, you can come to me.
But you can call CCRB. And again, people may feel like it doesn't go anywhere, but trust and believe that if an officer is out there abusing his authority, being disrespectful to people continuously, there's going to be a record of that. And if you make a complaint, you make a complaint, you make a complaint, there's going to be a record that 10 people made a complaint against this. Something must be wrong. Something must be wrong. But don't always just say, oh, well, they stopped me for no reason, I'm making a complaint, without looking at the whole facts of the story as well. You know, if they were respectful and they told you, listen, we stopped you because of this reason. If you think that you was wrong in any way, always feel you make a complaint. You can walk into a precinct, any precinct, regardless of what they may tell you when you walk into the precinct. You can make a complaint in any precinct.
I wanted to just go back a second to the whole videotaping. And correct me if I'm wrong. When you're videotaping, just please don't antagonize or escalate the situation. If you're having someone videotape, just remember your safety is paramount. We want to make sure we can all rally and complain about it later. We just want to make sure that you are safe. So if you're videotaping a situation, let's not have the commentary or anything else. Just make sure that you get the videotape and that you don't make whoever's videotaping doesn't make the situation worse.
And don't put yourself in the situation as you're videotaping as well, because an officer needs his safety as well. Like, how do I know you're not a friend with them and trying to attack from behind? It's going to be the thought process from the police officer's perspective. So if he's wrestling with somebody on the ground and you and you all up in the mix, don't be mad if an elbow comes back in your face. That's a reality. That's reality. But if you're at a safe distance over here, you're from afar.
In all honesty, the same way you leave your house in the morning and you want to come home at night, the police officer wants to do the same thing. Because they too have a family, they have kids, they may have a wife, they may have a husband at home that want to see them back home also. So believe me, the same way you want to go home at night, an officer wants to go home at night also.
You have a question?
So what training do cops go through when trying to figure out, dealing with youth and youth and police? What training do they have to go through? I interviewed a captain at a precinct before, and he said that certain cops go through, they have scenarios that when they deal with youth and teens. So do you know about that? And what are some of the scenarios that the cops are put in to try to never situation happens at the same thing?
I'll tell you this. There's no scenario, there's no practice inside of a setting like this that can prepare you for the real world of life. Because there are different factors that go into every scenario and every situation. How many times have you studied for a test and when you got to the test, this is not what I studied? No, because what was in the book and what's actually on the test, two totally different perspectives. So my thing, again, going back to how people react and converse with one another comes down to the basic simplest of respect. In order to give respect, you have to give respect. That goes on both sides. That goes from the police officer, that goes from the civilian aspect of things, that goes from kids. And I was a kid once myself, and I know sometimes I was a little bit above myself. I know I was feeling myself. You know, sometimes you didn't want to hear anything from what adults had to say. How many times were you in the street on a bus, riding with senior people, and your friends are cursing and doing this and doing that, F you, that, blah, blah, and nobody, and if a senior person happens to say, you shouldn't be doing that, shut up, blah, blah, blah. How many people have been on the bus and witnessed that? So now, that being said, if that's a senior person, why does it have to be a police officer to tell you, please, can you keep it down, or can you do this? Why does it have to be somebody in a uniform? Why couldn't it just be a senior person? Why couldn't it be a kid listening to what the senior person said? And we keep saying how to respond to police officers. My thing would be, how should a young adult respond to seniors, people of authority, teachers, doctors, lawyers, parents? It starts at home and it travels into the street. Because if there's no respect on different avenues, and from your teachers in the classroom telling you, please sit down, please turn on your phone, and you're like, nah, I ain't doing it, that carries over to the street. Unfortunately, when you meet a police officer, they have the authority to now arrest you based off of you not following a lawful order. There's a charge. There's a charge for disobeying a lawful order. If you committed a petty violation, if you committed any type of crime, and a police officer comes up to you, ma'am, can I please get your ID? F you, I'm not giving you no ID. Right off the bat, depending on the police officer you're dealing with, some might be like, all right. Woosah, ma'am, please, can I please get your ID? But based on that officer's day, and I will tell you from my personal experience, from dealing with little kids getting raped, from dealing with an adult being attacked in an elevator, sometimes you're upset. You're upset. How many of you have come from school and was upset, and your mom asked you something, so you may have put in an attitude, you might would have rethought if you had a chance to. Sometimes that happens, that I'm not a machine, I'm a human being. And when you get robbed, when a grandmother gets robbed, when a child gets, something happens to a child, it hurts me the same as that parent who's feeling it. But nobody hears that aspect of things. So, us being human beings with emotions, police officers, yes, not robots, we tend to be a certain way when we going through certain things. Is it right? Is it wrong? That's always going to be up for debate.
I know you said like you guys don't have, okay, so like this, scenarios are different from reality. But like, how do they train you to? Because they have to press you for certain things that are going to be approached to you as like an officer. So like, what are some of the training that you guys actually go through that is implemented in the?
Well, a lot of training that officers go through is in regards to how to be professional, how to speak to people. How to speak to people. It's the most basic thing. We go through a lot of laws in regards to what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. And in the scenarios, there are scenarios where it could just be you talk to somebody and the next thing you know, somebody's jumping out of a trunk of a car trying to stab you. So the basic thing is just talking to somebody and diffuses the conversation, just diffuses the whole situation just by talking to the person. But every scenario is different in real life. Take my clothes, it's hot in here.
So how do you feel about hospitals like going under a test and really see like their mental state of like a mental state of how they would handle situations, or like not even how they feel about people? Because you can say, oh, this cop is not racist because he did this and that, but you really don't know what's going on in their brain. So how do you think
what test would you have to determine what's going on in somebody's brain?
I'm just saying, like, okay, so like when kids, Okay, so I watched this one episode of Law and Order for
All right,
pedophiles.
hold on. Before you even go further, go ahead. Okay. TV tends to make sense in 30 minutes. The bad guy kills somebody, they find the person 30 minutes later.
You can tell me
Not
if
reality.
You can tell me if this is true or not.
Okay.
So basically, the guy was going undercover to be in this program to be like a pedophile, to do undercover work. So basically, he was like, all I have to do is click pictures of, little girls. But it wasn't, but the guy was like, no, it's how long you look at the pictures to see how attractive you are to them. It's not like just clicking. So if there was a test or there was like a program to see where your mental state was when looking at or answering questions based on grades and based on guidelines, how would you feel officers would be like? Do you feel officers would be like ready to take a test like that?
They already give that test. They give a psychological test to every police officer that gets hired. A psychological test to
How
every police
strong is
officer.
the test? Or how often is the test given to the police
It's-
officer?
Well, that's a different question. That's a different question.
You can give it to them once, but they need to
Correct.
go through different traumatic
Let me ask you something.
so they can give it to them more than once, right?
Let me tell you why. Two things. Well, anybody want to comment on this? Well, I'll tell you this. The city would not want to do something like that because my mental state is totally different from when I came on the job. The body, the human body, let me tell you, everybody's born innocent and clear, in my opinion. Everybody's born innocent. The human body is not prepared to see certain things in which I have seen in my life. So my mental state, when everybody's driving a car and you see a car crash, I see hundreds of those a day, bodies in cars. To me, driving and seeing a car, it's like, oh my God, I don't care. It's not that I don't care for the people, it's just that my mental state, I see that. So I'm numb to that. So desensitized. People get desensitized. It happens to military personnel going over to fight wars in Afghanistan, but there's a reason why we have post-traumatic stress is not just for military personnel, it's for police officers as well. My heart still hurts from late last year, the day before Christmas. We tried to path away for a little kid, 2 months old, tried to get into the hospital with my mommies. The baby wound up dying. She stopped breathing at night. My heart is still hurting with this. Still hurting with this. But I go by day with a smile, and you don't see, you can't say. So my mental state is not the same as when I started. Does that make me a better, a worse cop? Does that make me a good cop? Does that make me how can you discriminate on people based off of their mental state on certain aspects of it?
Yeah, but it wouldn't make you a bad cop, or it would make you a cop knowing how to defuse the situation better because
Every situation is different though.
every situation is different, but I feel like there should still be another test because a lot of cops are getting away with certain things and they're thinking maybe in their brain because they've seen it all the time that it's okay, but it's really not okay.
I agree.
So what are we doing as a people and what are we doing?
I'll tell you this. In this society, what sells on TV is money, sex, and mayhem. So what you see on TV, that one officer who happens to do this, that happened in New York, and then another one that happened in Ferguson, and another one that happens in Texas, and another, you tend to make it the whole world. I know for myself, I go on 30 to 40, 50 jobs a day from somebody doing this, somebody's this. That doesn't end up on the news. But the one incident you go to and you see on the news, everybody's guilty of it. How would you feel, my black man in here, walking down the street and feeling like, oh, everybody's looking at you as if you're a criminal? Oh, the officer's looking at me like I'm a criminal. Is that not the same thing you're judging every officer on based off of one officer's action on the news? And if that officer's on the news and being indicted, or obviously they caught the bad as he. But in life, there's a yin and yang. You have good, you have bad. Just because you put a uniform on doesn't erase the negatives.
I'm not saying that. So like, I know what you're trying to say. Okay, this is my last statement, guys. Okay,
Very
so
good
I-
question, very good questions.
So I know what you're trying to say, like we all perceive cops to be bad, and well, most people do, or a lot of people do. I'm not saying, but what I'm trying to say is that I know that every cop is an individual, and they all have individual, personalities and all that stuff like that. But I just feel like a lot of times when I go, I do another program, and I interview like a lot of different people, but I feel like when I interviewed this one captain, he just kept saying that we only see the negative side of cops and all this stuff. But I just feel like, why do you have to, I'm trying to read it not to sound like.
No, say it.
Say what you want to
Say
say.
what you want to say, it'll make it easier.
It just felt like he was trying to say that cops have to be worshipped for the good things that we do, and I just feel like this is a job that you wanted to do. You're supposed to protect the community and help the community. So the fact that every time you help that old lady cross the street, or you save this person's life, like, why do you feel like that has to be portrayed on the news? Of course, the bad. Not saying that the bad really does outweigh the good, because if you're doing so many negative things, and not saying that all cops do it, but like the fact that there's so many negative things going on in the media and that we see, why should
So many negatives. Give me 2 examples of so many.
I'm just saying that a lot, like with a lot of black young men dying, that's
Right.
a
Hold
big
up
negative.
now, this is something that's near and dear to my heart, because I tell you right now, I get disgusted when I see people rally and riot about a police officer who may do something against a young black male, but every day I see black on black crime. Our young men killing each other, and not one rally. When I go to the scene, I see a young man dead on the street. Did anybody see anything? I ain't snitching. Stop it. When I see, and once we start looking at everything as a whole, because we're looking at, the police has to change, It's a conundrum of things that have to change. Our school systems, our economy, our communities, our homes, the police department, but it starts here. It starts with self.
But when you see black on black crime, it looks
We have to give others an opportunity. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
This one here is yes.
So like my question is, so like I travel by myself, like once I get off the train. So like if I'm by myself and a police officer comes and stops me, are they allowed to ask me certain questions? Like if they ask like see my school ID or whatever, and I give them my ID, and then they start asking me random questions like what's your mom's name or like where you live, are they allowed to ask me those kind of questions without like an adult with me?
Nope.
Over time in this conversation, do you want to? I can respond to that, but it is varying factors in that as well. Depends on whether you're a truant, whether you're cutting school, certain hours. We are allowed.
No, so it's after school, like I'm on my way home at like 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So like yeah, like if I'm just like walking from the train station going home, and like a police officer stops me and he like asks me for my ID, and then he's like, okay, so where do you live? And how old are you? And what's your mom's name? What's your grandparents' name? Are they allowed to ask me those kind of questions?
How old are
Like
you?
it's not
No, I'm just asking, how old are you? 15. Okay, well, one of the things, I'll look at you, you do look a lot younger than 15. That's number one off the bat. And when you start seeing young people out there traveling by themselves, yes, they may stop you and ask you for your ID, ask you where you're going, things of that nature. And it's more for safety as to know why you're out there by yourself. It's understood that we have the 5 boroughs and we have public transportation and the children are going to travel because children are going to schools in different boroughs and things of that nature, but it also depends upon where you are, what were you doing, and it comes down to safety and security and just trying to make sure that you are safe.
Can I just speak on something to that point? And I've experienced this myself, and when I lived here in Brooklyn, I lived in public housing, and coming home from a party late at night, and patrol cars coming up the block, and they actually stopped me. And they asked, do you live here? And basically, the concern with the officer was, you're a young woman, it's 2 a.m., and you're walking in this neighborhood by yourself. Are you okay? And they stood outside the building. I mean, I was a little taken back because that had never happened before. But sometimes when it's a female, when I spoke to friends, they said that that's happened to them as well. When it's a female by herself at an odd hour, they may stop and ask you a question, or where do you live, or where are you going for safety or other reasons. I don't know the other reasons, but I was a little taken back initially until someone spoke to me and said, yeah, that's happened to me as well.
Right. We have a lot of runaways in the city. You know, people don't realize. We have a lot of runaways. We have a lot of kids who are missing, whether they were taken or whether they went on their own accord. So a lot of times, we're making sure, like, you know, hey, what's your name? You know, are you lost? Well, where are you from? And these are, sometimes there's something called a PINS warrant where a parent will have a warrant for their kids because the kids ran away sometimes, and we have to bring you back to the parent. And we're asking you because you may look familiar as somebody who we may recognize from the poster being a missing. So we're asking you, where do you live? And we're trying to see the consistency with your answers with us. Whether, how old are you? You should know how old you are right off the bat. Where you live at? No, and if you're nervous, hey, it is what it is. But again, if you're a parent and your child is lost, you would want us doing our job asking each child out there, hey, have you seen so-and-so? What's your name? But instead of taking the approach like, why are you stopping me? Sometimes it's not always about the...
Not like that. I just wanted to know if they were like allowed to ask you those kind of questions.
No, an officer's allowed to ask any question, but,
No.
well, not anything, but,
Oh, okay.
but you have the right to also say, I refuse to answer that question, and walk away. Now, if the
No,
officer
you can't.
refuses to let you walk away, that's
One at a
all.
time,
Antagonize them by
One moment.
Come again?
One moment.
You, yeah.
One at a time, please, so that we can all hear each other.
Come again, sir?
No, she said I'm not allowed to do that. She said I'm not allowed to do what I just did, so I won't do it.
No, what's your...
I said that might antagonize the person.
Well, shame on that officer for feeling the ways. At the end of the day, it is your right, based on the scenario she gave, to walk away.
Aren't they trained, police officers are trained, like, a normal reaction for a teenager would be to resist or not want to say anything. That antagonizes...
It depends on where that teenager grew up at.
But
what
they
household
those
they grew up
variables they can't, the variables on that they don't know.
Absolutely.
But they still are trained not to respond in a negative way because you might not want to answer, or you might resist with them putting their hands on you. And then that can escalate, and they'll get angry, and then they want to do something physical. That happens a lot, I hear.
Okay.
But they should be trained well enough to know not to do that with young people, teenagers, who are not, they feel antagonized already, rather, by the policeman.
Right.
That's
Well, we do have, just a moment. This young lady has been waiting quite some time to ask me a question. Yeah, my dear.
I guess I have like two things to say, so I'll try to keep it short. So basically, going back to what you said about black on black crime, I think that's an unfair way to say anything because there's white on white crime that they don't put in the media and that they don't talk about. And I'm pretty sure I read the statistic, there's more white on white crime than there is black on black crime.
Right.
And so to say that, oh, you're hurt that we don't say much to cops when we find out like somebody black, kill somebody else black, you also have to look at the history of police officers and black people in the community. And so why would we talk to police officers from all the years back, all they have done is justify beating us and killing us. Basically, I feel like that's another way of just lynching us in a different way. Now they have the authority because they got it bad.
Okay.
And I don't think that's right. But what I also think is that if you're gonna come into our community and ask us questions or patrol our community, then you have to have somebody there who understands us, who knows our struggle, who can communicate with us instead of having people who have no idea how to relate to people of color coming in our communities and talking to us like we are less than, because that's how they look at us from the outside in. And I know you're a black officer, so that might not be the same for you, but there are black officers that do the same thing.
Right.
And I've been in a situation where a cop has talked to me disrespectfully for no reason,
Okay.
has ran me and my friends out of places for no reason. And I don't think that's in your training. And I don't think that, and I've spoken to police officers and they have said it doesn't matter what's in my training. I have the badge.
Okay.
And I honestly think that there has, I don't know if you have that type of training or some type of work with the community or where the cops can actually come to a community event.
They have community councils for every precinct. Every precinct has a community council every month. Now, it's upon you to realize in newspapers or the news, they post when these community council meetings are going to be held. I know for my precinct, it's the last Wednesday of every month, 7-0 precinct. And if you are within Midwood, East Flatbush area, anybody from the community is welcome to come. And again, going back to the black on black crime as you described, I'm sorry, but is there racism? Absolutely, in every facet of this world. But look what you just said. Why am I going to talk to a police officer when I know the history? No. Hold on. You said, why should I trust a police officer? Let me tell you
why should people in our community trust them after what they did? Not
No. You say after what they did.
Yes.
The officer standing before you, me, the officer standing next to me, I know I didn't lynch anybody. I know I didn't beat anybody. As a matter of fact, I know there were laws enacted which allowed other officers to now come and join the forces to try to prevent certain things like that.
But it does happen, and that's like saying
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely it happens. But let's put the shoe on both sides though. Let's put the shoes on both sides because there's been plenty of times where I know I've come to scenes and a group of young kids, young adults, being all together as a pack, on the bus, on the trains, coming out of school, and McDonald's, standing on the tables, and kind of, people laughing because it's a reality. So now, when I come into McDonald's, I'm like, kids, you gotta relax, you gotta come down, because you're in a group, you feel like, oh, I can get away with saying certain things. You're saying, oh, well, why should I? It goes both ways. You can't expect an officer to be, please, when you're all no. It goes both ways in life. And about your crime statistic, yes, Caucasians do commit majority of the crime in the United States, but the majority of violent crimes in the United States are done in our communities. Violent crimes. And we're talking, do you want to comment on this? Oh, because if you want to talk about now the order, UCR, Uniform Crime Report, you want to talk about the order of crimes, and the 7 major crimes, we're going with rape, robberies, and things towards that nature. In order of priority, you're going to send you're going to disseminate your troops to deal with in order of priority, the most serious offenses. And if a lot of robberies and people are getting shot on this block, and maybe there's home burglaries, or maybe there's car break-ins over here, which do you find more serious? Which one do you find more offensive? The people getting robbed and shot, or the car break-ins, or home burglaries? So we have to look at each other. We have to look at our communities, and when we turn a blind eye, I don't want to snitch. When we have that thing, I don't want to snitch, and we allow certain people to sell drugs, we allow people to do certain things, we're only prolonging something that's probably inevitable. Because that drug dealer is going to have enemies in our communities. He's going to have people who's going to come back at him.
I think, something that's crucial to all communities, Black, white, Asian, green, Martian, whatever they may be, I think the most important aspect in order to receive respect and to advance whatever your goal is, whether it's respect from the people in law enforcement or knowing your rights, whether you can be stopped and asked questions, or knowing what protocol is one, to get some sort of formal understanding of what you want. You, like this young lady here, no offense, you had amazing thoughts, but they were all running like at the same time. And I understand that, but that's sort of where a lot of our communities are. We're all angry, we're all frustrated, we're all confused and hurt, and there's this collective sense, we get that collective sense of hurt and disrespect from our law enforcement officers, whether they're officers or captains or whatever the case may be. However, if you don't come together in forums like this, in your church, your house of worship, in your home with your families, with your friends, instead of just discussing, if you're reading this, it's too late, instead of just discussing that, it's hot, it's on my phone, instead of just discussing that, talk about how you feel disrespected when a cop asks you 50 million questions when you know you should be out. And you feel, say these things, speak them out. Don't just let them ruminate, as the old folks would say. Don't just let them stir in your mind. Actually say something, voice your opinions so that you can get a soundboard and you can get other people's opinions. And soon you might find out that 4 or 5 of your friends have been stopped this week. Young ladies or young men may have been stopped this week and said, hey guys, maybe we should go to our next community precinct meeting and see what the rationale is for that. It might be that there's a string of young runaways from Ohio, and the trap house might be 2 blocks from where you live, so that's why they're stopping. If you connect the gaps, if you connect the dots and bridge the gaps, that is a better way to get understanding, so that you don't just feel slighted personally. You understand the bigger story and the larger context of what happened, so that you're not swayed by what you hear on the news. It doesn't matter if the news is telling you everybody was killed in a village today or everybody got degrees in free McDonald's. It doesn't matter what the news tells you. You're informed about where you live and what concerns you. So, with that said, if you want to get involved, be a cop. I know it sounds crazy from the person who fights for everyone's rights against cops, but if you want to see change, you be the change. Be the change. Now, whether that's being a cop and joining the force, I know I couldn't do it. I don't run miles. I don't mess up this fresh washing set. I'm not going to do that. So that's not what I chose to do. But what I chose to do is I chose to be a part of the Civil Rights Bureau in the community that I was born and raised in. So when I hear about people being stopped, or I hear about people being frustrated about not understanding their rights, or I hear about people still being disrespected in 2015 about just breathing in and out in somewhere they're enjoying a meal or something, I can say, here's what you can do to get your respect back. Here's what you can do to get your power back, to get your voice back. That's what I can do. So what you should do is figure out what you're good at. If you can run, maybe you should be a cop. I can't run, so I won't be a cop, but I became a voice for my community. Maybe you could be a voice for your community, whether it's, hosting, whether it's coaching in your local elementary school, whether it's teaching at the schools that you attended in your youth, whether it's holding more than one meeting a year about what's happening in community, in your church. Whatever you can do, do it. Don't just complain about it, do it.
To do something different and be a help to his community, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Jeffrey Davis.
Welcome in Zion Baptist Church. By show of hands, I just want to ask the young people, how many of you have a smartphone? So I just want you guys to clarify something for me in regards to videotaping, because see, a lot of us have smartphones. Now, you said that we should pull out our phones and videotape if we see some type of injustice going on. Well, I want to know what's being done to protect someone that is videotaping, because of the situation on Staten Island where the guy that videotaped, all of a sudden he was targeted, he was arrested, his past was brought up, where he had nothing to do with that incident. So I want to know what's being done to protect me and everyone else in here that decides to videotape an incident involving a police officer.
I'm gonna allow the panel to answer, but I just want to speak to that Staten Island incident. Let's not use that gentleman as that gentleman had a lot going on prior to that.
Right.
So I just want to be clear.
What's that got to do with anything?
Let's deal with.
What's that got to do with anything?
Just give me 1 second. Let me respond to something. Okay? Let's talk about the particular videotaping rather than that gentleman's situation, because there's a lot that we don't know as a community in terms of that gentleman. And some of us are privy to other stuff that others aren't. So let's speak to the whole videotaping piece that Susanna asked for and kind of eliminate that situation, because there's a lot that as laypersons you do not know, and we don't want to sit and pick apart that one situation. I do understand what you mean.
So, but I've seen on Facebook, other incidents where people were videotaping and, police officers were, threatening them, telling them to, put it down. If I remember correctly, they snatched his phone, pushed him down, that type of stuff. So what is gonna be done for, to protect someone that's videotaping an incident?
When I made mention of videotaping incidents when you feel like your rights have been violated or you've been brutalized by the police, let me clarify. First of all, keep your distance. Like the sergeant said here a few moments ago, you can't, if someone were to run up on you right now, you're not going to just let them just run up. This man at some point is going to turn around and be like, yo, what are you doing? Back up off me. It's no different for police officers. So if you're trying to record an incident of yourself or of your friend, keep your distance. I promise you, I will be able to see what's happening 2 feet away just as good as I can see it from 2 inches away. So I don't need you to become, Spielberg or Scorsese and try to, focus the lighting. You don't need to worry about that. There's technology to handle that situation. What you should do is try to document the bare essentials, where you were, what time it was, and who was there. You can do that from 5 feet away. You can do that from across the street. You don't need to comment. You don't need to say, oh, he's only 15. Oh, this. You don't need to say anything. In fact, it's better if you don't say anything, because then we can hear what everybody is saying. If the officer called you out of your derogatory term, if the officer said anything, if anybody in surroundings said anything that could help identify who was there or help identify and clarify the situation that occurred, that's helpful. What's not helpful is if you're it actually might be hurtful if you're 2 inches away and you're giving, a blow-by-blow, play-by-play for us. We have eyes, we can see. So first of all, keep your distance. Second of all, if the officer asks for whatever the device may be, you don't give it. You don't give it unless they say, I'm going to arrest you or whatever. Then, if you don't want to be arrested, give it over.
If you don't want to be arrested.
If an officer takes something from you,
but if an officer
your phone, your keys, you're supposed to get a receipt for it. So
right.
It ain't somebody's taking your phone.
Yo, we got a problem. We got a problem. First of all,
listen. There are good cops and there are bad cops. There are good police officers and there are bad police officers. Are you listening to me? All right. Usually at these forums, there's the good police officers.
Right.
There are bad police officers out there. The good police officers have to know that they are bad police officers. They can't justify the actions of bad police officers. What transpired with Eric Garner was straight murder. That was an incident that the whole world saw. We're not going to cover that up and say, no, that was straight wrong. We've seen it with all our eyes. That was straight murder. Straight up, he choked that man. I don't care about what happened in the man's past. 20 years ago, 2015, that officer, that man said, I can't breathe. And they continued to push him down, strangle him, and did nothing to assist his life. Now, we got to get that. We can't play with that. We got to deal with reality. Now, when there's bad police officers and there's good police officers, when the good police officers in the precinct witness, see, hear about the bad police officers acting out, then the good police officers have to stand up, particularly the African-American ones, particularly the black ones, have to stand out and put those bad police officers in check. Go to the go to the lieutenant and the sergeant and say, that officer right there is off the hook. That officer right there is violating the community, my community that I come from. That good police officer, but when they identify that, they make excuses. The good police officers, through my travels, make excuses and know that those racist white police officers and some black police officers are wrong, and the good police officers don't stand up. That's when they begin to think about their own job, their own life. Now,
So can you tell us how we can bridge the gap
yes,
between us and the community?
Yes.
Because what we need our children to know, because we already know that they're good, bad cops, but we want our youth to know is how to effectively interact with the
have respect.
good and bad.
Show respect. First of all, respect yourself. I mean, you're going to get respect from others if you're carrying yourself with respect.
Not all true.
If you're not walking down the street loud and cussing and screaming and got your pants down to your ankles, show respect for yourself. Have respect, and then others will respect you. If you're on the bus, this is easy, 1, 2, 3, and there's a senior, and you're loud and screaming and cussing, and you see adults on the bus, have respect. It's just a matter of respect. Respect yourselves. Look at you, you're ambassadors for your community. You're ambassadors for your mother, your daddy, your grandparents, for me, our ancestors. Have respect. If you interact with a police officer and he's being disrespectful, have respect. Respect yourself. If he's being nasty, it's all right. You can oblige and walk away. If it's way over the top, if it's just too much, you can oblige, come here, blah, 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 blah. Officer, you're scaring me. Officer, you're scaring me. And then you oblige. You got ID. I have ID. Just a minute. Wait a minute. Look at me and talk loud. You need attention. Don't. You want the community to see what's going on. You want the community to see that this officer hear it loud, so other ears, eyes can notice this interaction with that officer and you. Do you want my ID? Officer, I'm 15 years old. I don't have ID. I'm coming from school. And what else do you need from the officer? Loud. To her or him. But we've got to interact and show respect for the police. Right? And respect for yourself.
I'm going downstairs.
Now, yes, there are precinct community council meetings every single month. There are precinct council meetings. Each precinct has a council meeting that you can go to. I highly recommend it. If you move into another neighborhood, the first and foremost, you find out what precinct, who the commanding officer is, who the bosses in that precinct is, who the community affairs in that precinct is, and you go to that precinct, and you go to that precinct council meeting and interact. So now you know Chief Madry, now you know Chief Nelson, now you know Lieutenant this one, and Sergeant that one, on a first name basis.
I just want to, and not to cut you off, I know that Susanna's question about videotaping.
Yeah,
Videotape,
I just
highly
want to
recommended.
clarify for these young people, because, you know, I'm gonna tell you what I heard. Pull out my phone and videotape when I see something.
Videotape.
Right.
Yes, use
So,
the phone.
but I
You got
just want
phones?
some clarity,
Yes,
so
videotape.
that they know, and myself.
Video.
You are allowed to video, anybody is allowed to videotape what is going on in the street between the interaction between a cop and a civilian. You are allowed to, but again, always do it in modesty in regards to not getting involved in the situation.
If there's a situation, if there's a crime scene, or if the police are interacting with whatever situation, you gotta get out the way so they can do their job.
Correct.
That's what the officer said. You gotta get out the way so they can do their job. So you can't be in a mix like this.
Now, have somebody in here been wronged by an officer? I know I've been wronged by officers. I know myself as the sergeant has been wronged by officers. Period of the story. The fact of the matter is, one event is not absolute of all. One event is not absolute of all. And there are procedures in place in which you can identify or try to single out what officer did you wrong. Now, this gentleman's been waiting for a long time to ask a question. I want to hear his question, please.
I just have one thing, because we have children who have been waiting to ask a question. And that's what this is. So let me just make sure our youth gets the question.
Something I don't understand is that
okay, I be in the streets, right? And I realized when the stoplight, when it turns red, the cops, like the cop cars is right there, but they don't wanna wait, they just wanna go. That's something I don't like, because it gets me frustrated. Like, they go, they don't know how to wait, they just wanna go. And if, what if a little girl was running across the street? Say that. This little girl running across the street, and this cop can't wait, he just wanna go. So he go and hit that little girl. How, does he know how her family feels? Does he know?
Well, let's not go off of what might happen. If there was a situation which in history did happen and those officers were fired off of that. That incident did happen in the Bronx, and in fact those officers were fired. But let's go to another incident where it did happen, but they were responding to something. Because you're outside, you see an officer go past the red light. I know numerous times we're getting calls. There's a bank robbery. Somebody's been robbed. Okay, we gotta wait for the red light to turn in order before we go respond to that. No, we're going through red lights. But you're supposed to go through it with caution. You're supposed to go through it with your lights and sirens on different times. But depending on how far you are from the scene, if I know that somebody just finished robbing somebody, depending on how far it is, if it's up the block, I'm not spooking the bad guy away by putting my lights and sirens on, because then they're gonna go the opposite way. So there's different varying factors which determine why officers do things. The same thing, officer on his phone while driving. There are times when I know I've been on the phone while driving in the car because I'm on the phone with complainants. Where did he go? Which way did he turn? People who are on the phone at the time, and yes, there are those who are just on the phone parlaying, which is wrong. But the same way you have been texting while crossing the street, somebody's been texting while driving, we are all wrong. We do wrong. That doesn't mean somebody should do their job or somebody, it doesn't mean that somebody should, there's two wrongs don't make a right. And everybody's not perfect. Nobody's perfect, matter of fact.
That officer,
So we need to stay alert.
that
We need to
officer
make sure
that,
that we're alert. So far, what I'm gathering, be courteous, respect yourself, be alert, be safe. You can complain or we can deal with it later. We just want to make sure that you're safe when we see these situations. I know we have,
that officer that if he ran over somebody and he's not on the call, he should be fired, arrested, put in jail,
And it was done.
continuously. So not just fired, they should be, all right? So that's the answer to your question. If he's wrong and they're not on the call, they should be fired, arrested, and convicted.
Jason.
When y'all talk about videotaping, now, when we videotape, is it to any good use?
Well, we wouldn't have seen what happened with Eric Garner.
But we still seen that and nothing has happened.
Well, no, that's the thing.
This conversation is happening.
I understand this conversation is happening, but still,
Stand up.
if I'm not correct, like, we videotape incidents and things that happen in our community. We videotape like people being abused and police brutality, but the result of it is nothing happening to these cops. Just maybe a charge or two. I feel like maybe I'm being like maybe too what's the word, too naive, but I feel that when certain situations that are major happen to maybe a African American or Hispanic, the cop that does the situation is not like indicted, like say for the Eric Garner situation. You can see that he clearly choked the man out, but it's nothing happened to him. He's still out in the world. He's not in jail.
All right, that's not.
Who made that decision?
One second. Could any one of you speak to the indictment process? Because that's one of the questions that I had here.
Yeah.
Okay, could someone walk everybody through the indictment process? Because that's important. We don't understand how that process works, which leaves us bewildered when something's so clear, like that videotape. Okay, clearly that man was choked.
Right.
What is the process?
It's important when your parents get the letter in the mail to do jury duty.
Yes.
We can't run from it. We can't make excuses for jury duty. We've got to go there and serve. Because there's people in that courtroom, in the cases, that need you. There's innocent people. So if you don't do jury duty, right, and they get called for grand jury, or whatever cases, if you ran from it, then you see these different things taking place in the courtroom, you are obligated. We have to know our civic duty. Huh?
Right. So when a crime is committed, or an investigation.
She works at DA's office.
Yeah, she works at the DA's office.
When a crime is committed or an investigation is completed and they find that they, have found the suspect that they want to indict or arrest and bring charges against, what is done is, at least in, I guess, I will speak for Brooklyn. I cannot speak for everybody. But what is done in Brooklyn is that there is a grand jury, and that grand jury consists of anywhere, I guess 12 to sometimes upwards of 24 people, or 22 to 24 people. So
who are these people? Explain to the kids what the grand jury is.
These people are everyday people. They're not cops. They're not prosecutors. They are janitors. They are pastors. They are students. They're everybody who lives in the borough that is registered to vote. They are the people that are called on to serve. It is their civic duty to serve on some sort of jury at some point in your life, whether it's in civil court or criminal court or Supreme Court or the appeals. There's tons of courts that you can serve in, maybe not appeals, but you will be called to jury duty at some point at some level of the judicial system. So when that happens, a prosecutor from the prosecutor's office, in this instance the Kings County District Attorney's Office, will present evidence to that person. Now when that person is arrested, if in the case of a crime being committed and the person is already under police custody, that person's attorney is served with what is called a 190-50 notice. And that gives the person the opportunity to speak on their behalf during the grand jury proceeding. When the person has the option to say, yes, I will speak on my behalf during this grand jury proceeding, or no, I will not speak on my behalf during this grand jury proceeding. The grand jury proceeding is not whether to prove whether or not the person is innocent or guilty. A grand jury process is to prove whether there is enough evidence to bring forth a trial. So in the case, I will now speak to the Garner case. In the case of the Eric Garner grand jury proceedings, those are secret, so those minutes were not produced to the public. With that said, the prosecutor, for whatever reason, chose whatever those charges that were chosen to bring to the grand jury may have not been substantiated by just the video. It may not have just been substantiated by Mr. Garner saying, I can't breathe. We know of a homicide report, but they may not have put that into evidence. Because it was secret and because we don't have access to, the lay people of the city do not have access to the minutes of the grand jury proceedings, we don't know what was said, we don't know what was done during those proceedings, we don't know what evidence was put, they may not have put in that video evidence. We know about, it doesn't make sense.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It doesn't make sense because when you're arrested, you are told what you're charged with. So if the officers are told that they're being charged with X, Y, and Z.
No, but what she's saying is what was presented to the grand jury
Right, but
may
the
not have
grand jury
been.
is presented with the charges.
But
That's
Right,
what
but that officer wasn't arrested. That grand jury proceeding was done as a result of an investigation. So when the person who the grand jury is hearing proceedings regarding, that person isn't always arrested. So in the case of, say, maybe a drug ring, we don't want them to know that they're arrested yet. So they're not arrested. They're still out committing crimes because you might have wiretaps still up. There might be several things still going on, and as far as the investigation is going, that's why they're long. That's why there are sometimes long-term investigations. So there are long-term grand juries as a result, and they hear things as they come in. So in the case of the officer who choked Mr. Garner to death, he was not arrested at the time of the grand jury proceedings. So he would not have known about the 190-50, and that would not have been presented to him.
Okay, so please clarify for us, who then was the focus of the grand jury?
We have no idea. That
We're suing
information is
now.
not public.
We're suing now to try to get the information
Right, that information is not public.
on how grand jury, how the prosecutor presented that. So we can get that information.
You saying who was the focus? The focus was the officer, Pantaleo.
Say something? The problem with that, with this case and talking about it here is that we don't know what evidence was presented.
No, no,
But to speak to the process.
And that's what I'm trying to
of
get at.
indictment.
Because I've sat on at least 7 grand juries, short term, the 2-week one, the 6-month. So I feel that I'm very familiar, and it's always a focus in every grand jury. And it's not a trial, you're not presenting evidence, and you're presenting it from the perspective of the court of law. So to say that the officer was not arrested and charged, then now I'm very confused, because then what is the focus when the assistant district attorney comes in to talk about, and
That's what I'm saying. We have no idea. It's complete, the record is sealed. It's a completely different process.
That's why we're trying to get that information. That's why
Yeah,
we're
it's a
trying to-
completely different process, and I can't speak to that. So that is a problem. Secret grand jury proceedings are a problem. They go back to Magna Carta. I could give you a whole history lesson on that. But the more important issue is that when evidence is presented, it's not whether or not someone is guilty in a grand jury proceeding. The evidence that's being presented is whether or not there's enough evidence to go to trial for the assault, for the crime, whatever it is that is being charged. So yes, you might videotape, and yes, it sometimes is not enough, because it's a combination of evidence. It's a combination of that prosecutor's dedication to the trial and what they want to bring. Sometimes I can't speak for any prosecutor, but I can speak to the process. And if a prosecutor is lazy, a prosecutor will not do their due diligence in terms of making sure they get enough, even if it's just menacing. You want to put in as much evidence, you want to put in as many charges as possible so that you get something. So chances are in Staten Island, which is a borough mainly resided by cops and other civil service officers, you may not get a homicide charge against a cop. But whether or not we get those minutes or not, that prosecutor could have put in a menacing charge, and they probably could have gotten that if they put in that video as evidence. There's several layers to it, but the major thing is that charges and evidence are entered in, and the grand jury, which are a jury of our peers, comes back and says true bill or not true bill. True bill is that there's enough evidence to go to trial. Not true bill is there's not enough evidence to go to trial.
I want to say this. I want to answer this real quick. There's a police officer named Justin Volpe.
Yes.
I just want to answer that. He's been in jail now for how long? He's been about 15 to 20 years. So not all get off. Justin Volpe, the case was when he was like, I'm going to do an ad-lib. Justin Volpe violently disrespected a young man with a nightstick, right? And he was arrested, convicted, and given 25 years of life. He's been in jail for 20 years. So it's not out the realm when you say this always happens. So when we organize, there are police officers that go to jail and do hard time. He's been in jail for 15 years now. And so on and so forth. Another case, Yusuf Hawkins, there's different police officers that haven't been to hers, where we have organized. And when they violated and didn't pay attention to the law themselves, thought they were bigger than the law, and we came together. So you can get arrested and convicted.
There was an officer just indicted in East New York, Brooklyn. There was a video camera from somebody just like yourself who's videotaping. He came to the scene and just kicked the guy in the head.
Oh, you mean that? Yeah.
And he's been indicted.
He's been indicted. So don't think that it can't happen.
So we can't, so,
No, they kicked him in
The
the head.
major things make the news. The little things
Right.
The one he's talking about didn't make the news. It wasn't really big, but that officer was indicted. He kicked the young man in the head. So don't feel that.
The Gardner case is one
But don't
case,
just
but
go off
trust
the
me.
news. Do your own background and investigation on things as well. Don't always go off what TV says. You have to do your own homework in life.
It's not like that. It's just what I'm saying. It was major. It was in our faces. We just
And that's what we had the Black Lives Matter, and we didn't just say, I mean, you've seen about all the rallies all across the country, so we didn't just say, oh, well. We raised up, black, white, we raised up behind that, the whole country. So don't feel There's no hope. There's hope.
No, there's not.
So we only have, and I'm so sorry, we only have 5 minutes.
Let me say this real quick. It's a snowstorm. That's why I was late. Y'all don't know, you're in this wonderful, beautiful church. It's a storm out there. It's snowing.
So let's.
And I'm trying to make it. Now go ahead. No storm.
We only have 5 minutes left. I am charged to ask our panelists for words of encouragement for our youth, since we're wrapping up. What can you speak to? What words of encouragement do you have for our youth here at Zion?
The one thing that I have to say, just as collectively as what the many questions that you as a youth have, as your parents, your guardians, and others from the church have had. The most important thing when it comes down to dealing with law enforcement, dealing with police officers, is respect. You have to respect their authority as you would respect the authority of your teacher, your principal, your parent, and other members of your church. The first thing for change is yourself. You have to have respect for yourself. You have to be strong. You have to educate. Make sure you stay in school. Do good grades. And go into college, because to be into law enforcement, whether you're a police officer, you work for the FBI, you work for Secret Service, you work for the district attorney's office, if you want to go into education, if you want to go into politics, the most important thing for you is to be educated and understand what's going on, because it's you are the one that can make a change. You are the foundation, you are the next generation coming up. You make sure that you keep yourself abreast, you keep God in your life, because He will help you move forward with anything that you do. The important thing is also be involved in your community. It's important. First of all, you're involved with your community. You want to go to church. Believe it or not, you dealing with the church. You go to the community meetings with the precincts. You help with other different organizations. Believe it or not, that information goes on your college applications, and that is a big decision in you getting into a college that you want. How do I know? Yes, I do. I have a young son that had went through the same process, and that was some of the important things that he was able to put on his application. So that is extremely important. Don't not think about getting into law enforcement, because one of the best things that you want to see yourself in your communities, because somebody else spoke about it too. Who is the best to help police your community? Is somebody as you. You're the one that came here, you're the one that's from the communities, you know how to deal with the people, and you know what's what. You're educated, you're smart, you're God-fearing people, and that's who you want in your community.
That was excellent. Focus. If your friends are acting up, and they're your friends, but they're acting up, they're not going to school, you can talk to them and try to counsel them to get them to stay in school and get their lives together. But if they're just really, really bad, you got to stay focused and you got to do your thing. Because you got to do your thing. You got to go forward. You can't let them bring you down. If you got girlfriends that are not behaving themselves properly and acting out and not being respectful, then you got to tell them, girl, you're not doing the right thing. You're not carrying yourself like the queen that you are and like the kings that you are. And you got to let them go, because you got to stay focused and do your schoolwork. I know that's my boy, so I got to hang with my boy. But if your boy's doing the wrong thing out there, you can verbally tell him what you're doing is going to get you in trouble. It's going to get you in trouble, and it takes a lifetime to get out of it. Maybe 30 years later, if you get out of it. I got to let you go. And if they're truly your friends, they'll understand. I understand this is my lifestyle, and this is what I'm doing. But since you're my boy and I want you to come in this direction, that's the friend that's not doing right. If they're truly your friends, they'll understand and say, go on to school and do your thing. Like this, and they'll respect you for it, because they're truly your friends. If they say, come on with me, and let's do wrong, that's not your friend. That's not somebody that cares about you.
I just want to say, as a civil rights activist and agent of change, I encourage you and I charge you to not let it stop with me. I'm not much older than you, but I am old enough to be your favorite auntie. And you have to be involved. So you can't just go off what you hear. Know for yourself what's going on in your community. Be aware, be active, and be present, and be a voice so that it's not just someone else speaking for you. So that means vote, that means serve, do your due diligence, and serve on juries. Do whatever you can to be involved in this process so that the process can include you. And you don't say, why us, why me, why is this happening? Be involved so that you can be a part of the change that you want in your community. As a minister, I say to you, pray. Speak to the God of your understanding so that you know what it is that He wants you to do. Jeremiah 29:11 says that He knows the plans that He has for you and that you have a purpose for your life. The purpose of your life is not just for yourself. So don't think about what am I going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do as Christians to make sure that we are respected, that our black brothers and our black sisters are not just dying in vain? It's not just Rosa and Martin and Malcolm who we celebrate the anniversary of his death yesterday. It's not just those people who died. We're still dying. Yes. So pray to your God and say, what must I do to see change, Lord? What must I do to live freely and to sit in a McDonald's without having an altercation with a cop? To be able to walk from the train station at 5 in the afternoon, which is not unreasonable, and be asked the line of questioning. What must I do? Because He's the God of the universe and He hears you and He desires to speak with you. So pray to Him and listen for an answer. And I promise you He will give you what you need in order to go forward.
What I have to say, I have a lot to say, but I'm gonna keep it short. What I have to say, I want to target most of the young women in here because y'all have a tremendous impact on how men behave. Y'all have so much power that you have no idea. If you choose a boyfriend or a husband or a partner in someone who has his pants dragging, who's cursing, who degrades people in the street, what do you think he's going to do to you and your child? What happens, the decisions we make have a way of coming back to us in life. And it comes back not to just our home, but to our community. So women, if you choose a man who is educated, who respects himself and you and his family, chances are you'll create communities that respect everyone.
I want to thank everyone that participated today. There was a wealth of information and dialogue. So I do thank you. I thank you for your honest thoughts and your questions. Just a few things too. This wonderful sister was lovely enough to compile some to-dos for us as young people. I'm kind of including myself in that. Things young people can do when stopped by police officers. One, be respectful of yourself. Be respectful of policemen and authorities of law. Speak respectfully. Answer questions that are asked of you in a voice that others will hear you. Always carry identification. Produce identification when asked, school ID, non-driver's ID, and any other ID that you may have. Look at an officer's badge and get his or her name. Be proactive, start a group, attend community council meetings, organize young people to invite commanding officers to your church and school. Videotape. Stay at a safe distance. Remember that you are sons and daughters of the Most High, and He will never leave you nor forsake you, and will always be with you. With that, we say God bless you, we love you, and thank you. Thank you for
got there. Did you feel that? Let me see.